Hello, everybody. Welcome to Townsend 505. Or welcome back for your lovely viewer. Today's video, me and Bryer from Bryer's Music Showcase. We're going to be reviewing their eighth studio album, Black Sabbath's eighth studio album, Never Say Die. This is the last album in a very long time to have Ozzy Osbourne on lead vocals, and this is the end of the 70s decade. So pretty long, 8 years of Black Sabbath. You have anything to say before we start?
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Oh, it's freezing up.
Yeah, you froze up for a sec.
Oh, what was the last thing I was talking about?
You're just kind of giving a little introduction to the album.
Yeah, it's the eighth studio album, Black Sabbath. You have anything to say?
Oh yeah. Okay, so so we're kind of talking to the people who are watching this. Have a different setup than usual because we were just talking off screen that my internet has been very inconsistent lately. So I'm using my phone. The only downside of using my phone is that I don't have my notes with me, so I have to just go by what I remember I wrote. Luckily, I remember a good deal of it. So first, some background info. So again, another 2-year break between this album and Technical Ecstasy. So by this point, the band were really falling apart. Of course, drugs was one thing, and of course, they were starting to feel tired of the whole process of everything. And funny enough, after they toured Technical Ecstasy, Ozzy actually quit briefly though. So while Ozzy was gone for those couple months, they decided to get a new singer. And the person they got is actually kind of funny because it's actually just a little connection to another series we're doing. So, of course, this singer appeared only on one album, and he appeared on this album, and that was Dave Walker. So Dave Walker was actually briefly a lead singer for Black Sabbath, and he actually did write and recorded a little bit of stuff for what would become this album. But of course, Ozzy eventually did return. He did come back, and so they kicked Dave out of the band, and it's like, okay, Ozzy, come back in. But when Ozzy came back, he was starting to be a bit more hard to work with. The big thing was that when he saw the songs they were writing with Dave, he was like, I'm not singing on those. And so he basically had them just ditch as most of the material and just write all new stuff for Ozzy to sing. And there's a couple songs that were saved, but yeah, majority of it was gone. So they had to quickly restart. And so they recorded this in Toronto because they wanted to avoid the British tax. So they did that. And yeah, it was just, according to the band, this wasn't really a very happy recording session. Yeah, and so they released it in 78. And critically didn't do nearly as well as previous albums. But despite that, commercially still did fairly well. It went to number 12 in the UK, so still pretty high, but it only got to like it didn't really made the top 50 here in the US, so it kind of dropped a little bit here in the States. But there you go. That's the history on it. So I will say it's definitely going to be a very interesting review because to most people, this is often cited as one of not just the worst Ozzy album, but definitely one of the worst albums in their whole catalog. So we'll see how this goes. I think we might have some surprising opinions on this one.
Yeah, it's another album that I feel that is very underrated. I don't get why people say it's one of the worst albums. I really don't. Still got that Ozzy, great vocals by Ozzy. Still got pretty good writing, and I think the instrumentation is still really good. Me personally, I don't get it. I don't know if this could be a divisive episode where you're gonna feel one way and I'm gonna feel drastically about another way. Well, I'm not sure yet. So, but yeah, I feel like this is probably their most underrated album as of now. The first song on the album is the title track, "Never Say Die."
All right, Never Say Die. So I will say, this is a pretty decent opening song. I will say it's probably my favorite song on the album. The playing is really good on here. Like, got a good guitar riff, and the drums and the bass were pretty solid through and through. And lyrically, it's pretty straightforward. Never say die, just referring to just never giving up on life, basically. Um, I'd say the one thing, and this goes for the whole album, is that to my ears, the production definitely does sound a bit off. Because even this remaster, like this came out in 2016, even this remaster still sounds. You can tell there's something not quite right. Because it's definitely not their most well produced album. It definitely sounds a bit rushed. Because again, like I said, they were just scrambling to get this done in time. Um, but overall, it's a pretty decent opening track. It's probably my least favorite of their opening songs, but it's still a very solid song. So yeah, that's my thought on the first song.
Yeah, I'd say they're. I think they're 8 for 8 with their opener so far. They haven't made a bad opener yet. I will agree with you. This is probably their one of the weaker openers. Not as good as some of their other ones, but I still find this to be a really good song, and I can see why this is the big hit from the album, like the one that that's on Grace Hits albums and why it's the most remembered because
Mm-hmm.
it's probably like the most Black Sabbath of the 9 tracks, I'd say.
Mm.
Next song on the album, Johnny Blade.
Okay, Johnny Blade. So another pretty decent song. This is one that I quite liked. I really like Bill's drumming on here. I think the drumming on here is pretty solid through and through. And I almost forgot to mention the keyboard intro was actually pretty cool. I like the vibe they were setting with that. Um, uh, and lyrically, it's kind of interesting because Johnny Blade's supposed to be about. It was kind of based on Bill's brother, who apparently was in a gang when he was 16. When a teenager, I'm not sure he was 16, but that's kind of interesting. But yeah, um, and then I did have one complaint though, is that I do feel like a few of these songs go on a bit too long because a lot of these songs are like 6 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes, and I feel like with this song, I think you could have shaved maybe a few seconds off to make it a bit tighter. But other than that, it's still a very decent song. It's pretty heavy for the most part. So yeah, I like it.
I see where you're coming from about the length. I think this is one of my favorites off the album. I think the keyboard part is definitely very interesting. I'd say it's like probably the best part, probably one of the best parts of the song. Um, yeah, this is a very underrated song from them. That's definitely one of my favorites from them in general. Ever since I really re-listened to this album, really really good song. Um, Again, I don't get why not many people are into this album. I really think it's good. I think it's a really good album. Uh, Next song in the album, Junior's Eyes.
Junior's Eyes. So this is one of the songs that was written with Dave Walker. Of course, you can actually find if you go to YouTube, you actually can find a recording of Dave singing the song with the band. Of course, when Ozzy came in, they kept the song, but they ditched the lyrics. So they actually redid the whole lyrics. And basically, what this song is about now in this on the album is supposed to be about Ozzy's dad, because that's another thing that probably added to the drama was because Ozzy's dad passed away around the making of this, and so of course that was fresh in his mind, and so the lyrics definitely reflect that, and lyrically it's pretty good. I'd say it's pretty nice. Um, Again, so it has a good bass line. I like the bass playing on it. It has a good bass line riff throughout. Um, and again, it has a decent groove to it. But again, I think the length once again suffers, kind of hurts it a little bit for me. And again, I think it goes on a bit too long, same as before. Because there's not really a whole lot of change ups in it. There's like the bridge section was pretty interesting, but other than that, it kind of just stays in that field for a while. And again, you could have shaved it a little bit, made it a bit shorter. But again, it's still a decent song. It's still just barely made the top 5 for me. So it's a fine song. So I don't have like a huge complaint about it.
hmm I think it's a pretty good song. It's probably like a middle of the road Black Sabbath song. I think it's
Hmm.
pretty good. It's not one of my all time favorites. I like it. It's pretty good. I agree with you. I agree with you on this song. I feel like this song could have been a little shorter.
Hmm.
Next song on the album, A Hard Road.
Hard Road. All right. All right. So this is probably the song that hurt the most with its length for me. It's not, again, it's not terrible, but again, it just stays in this one groove for pretty much the majority of the song, and it's like close to like 5 to 6 minutes again, I think. So yeah, it definitely started to get old a bit about a minute in. Um, and there's even what's interesting about this track is that this is actually might be the first time the whole band contributes on the backing vocals. It's because I looked it up that Tony, Bill, and Geezer were doing some backing vocals for this track, and it's like it's cool, it's kind of cool, but at the same time doesn't really add too much because they're not really. It doesn't really. I mean, Black Sabbath to me aren't much of a harmony band, and usually if there is harmonies, it's usually just Ozzy, just multi-tracked. Um, so again, it's not horrible, but it's not one of my favorites.
I thought the harmonies were alright. I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, it is different to hear Black Sabbath doing that.
Mm-hmm.
A little uncomfortable when I first heard it.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown to somewhat appreciate it. Um, again, this is another one of their more middle of the road songs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ranks more in the 40s because I'm like I said, I'm ranking all the Black Sabbath songs, and it's like around like middle 40s. So it's good, but it's not like something I'm really going to go back to that
Right.
much.
Yeah.
But like when I am listening to it, I do enjoy it. Next song on the album, Shockwave.
Shockwave. Okay, so this one's actually one of the more better songs on the album. It's actually probably one of the more heavier songs on the album. It has a nice guitar riff. Bass and drums are pretty solid through and through. This is one I didn't have a whole lot to say what I remember on my notes. Um, but yeah, Ozzy sounds pretty good on this track. And yeah, it's a pretty good kind of more heavier song on this album. So it's decent. It's pretty good.
I think that's a great way to open up the second side.
Mm-hmm.
Not I wouldn't say it's one of my all-time favorites, but it's still a really good song, and yeah, I like it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Next song on the album, Air Dance. Mm.
So this is where the album gets really quite interesting. So this is another song I actually quite liked. It's definitely very odd because it has this kind of commercial, kind of more poppier sound. But what's interesting is that at moments they kind of go into like a jazz breakdown. So now the band's starting to incorporate a lot more jazz influence, which is kind of interesting. I like the chorus where the acoustic guitar is kind of heard underneath. I think that adds some texture to it. Um, see what else about it. Trying to remember. Yeah, just trying to remember. But yeah, it's very fascinating type of track. It's in the top. It's in my top five, so it's definitely left an impression. But yeah, it's just a very weird song in their catalog. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about it.
I think this song's amazing.
Mm.
This is another song that's not one of my favorite Black Sabbath songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. It's probably the most underrated song on the album. This and Johnny
Mm.
Blade are extremely underrated. Uh, if there's two songs I'd say you should get out of it besides the obvious hit "Never Say Die," it's those two songs. It's really
Mm.
good.
Yeah.
Next song on the album, "Over to You."
All right. What's notable about this song that this is the final song we'll hear Ozzy sing on a Black Sabbath album for a long time, which there's a reason for that, even though there's two more songs left. Yeah, this one didn't really do much for me. I thought it was okay. But again, it just sounds like Black Sabbath by the numbers. It's not, which is not a bad thing. But again, it's the same issue I have with a hard road. It kind of goes on, it kind of meanders for a while. Doesn't really do much. Just kind of stays in its place. Not really memorable. I can't really remember the riff honestly. Um, but yeah, not again. It's okay. It was okay, but again, didn't have a whole lot to say about it.
All I gotta say is that I'm very thankful this wasn't the last Ozzy Osbourne song in general for him.
Yeah,
Would have been
same
a
here.
very this would have been an okay this would have been a very very okay way to finish off his time with Black Sabbath. So I'm glad he decided to make one more album with them.
Yeah, it took about 30 years, but we got it.
Yeah, and I think it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Next song on the album, it's an instrumental, Breakout.
All right, so this was actually another track written with Dave, and it had lyrics, but again, Ozzy was like, "I'm not singing that," and so they decided to keep the song but just make it instrumental. And yeah, this is probably my least favorite track on the album. Again, it's them doing jazz again, which again, it just feels so out of place with Black Sabbath to me. It's very slow. Like it's like so it's like not even that long. It's not. It's like I can't remember how long it was. Like 3 minutes or something like that. But it feels longer because of just how slow the beat's going. You have brass instruments on here. Um, but yeah, it's just a very again, it's not really one I will ever go back to honestly. So yeah, this is probably the lowest points in this era to me. So yeah, then wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah, I think this is not their weakest moment. I still think Iron Man's the weakest song. I still have that at last place and still staying strong with that. Yeah, I agree. This is definitely the weakest point of this album. The only tracks I'd say is weaker than this is Embryo, the very
Mm.
short piece
Or
from.
FX.
Oh yeah, FX is definitely second. Their second worst thing that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Objectively, it's the worst thing that they did up at this point. Uh, but yeah, yeah, it's all right. I mean, it would have been nice if there was actually singing going on. Uh, I will say the jazz influence wasn't too out of place because on their debut album, they did that a little bit on Wicked World,
Right,
just a
true.
little. They
But it,
dabbled into it, but they didn't really go heavy into it.
yeah, it
So,
wasn't too heavy. It was still, I mean, the song was heavy, but it wasn't like heavy
but not like
jazz.
it wasn't like
Yeah.
heavy influence on that. But I,
Mm-hmm.
I, I get where you're coming from, but I'm not as surprised about it after listening to Wicked World. But this is all right.
Mm-hmm.
Which for Black Sabbath standards, which means it's horrible. So,
Mm-hmm.
last track on the album, Swinging the Chain.
All right, so the final song, it does have lyrics, but it's not from Ozzy. It's actually another song sung by Bill Ward, the drummer. And, I think I don't know which song I like more because he's done two. He did It's All Right on the last album, which I kind of liked. It was more of a ballad, but here Bill's going more rock approach, and you can tell because he's putting more grit into his vocals, which again, pretty all right. He's definitely a decent singer. Um, Again, I'm trying to remember more about it, but I mean, it was pretty okay for the most part. I think the guitars was pretty average. The drums and the bass were probably the big highlights here. Um, yeah, it's overall, I thought it was kind of a lackluster way to go out, honestly, for me. Again, it's not horrible, but it just kind of leaves you. It doesn't really leave you with a good taste in my mouth, personally.
I think it's a good song. I will say it's probably their weakest closer so far. I think their last seven albums had a much better closers. Even Paranoid had a much better closer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, if you ask me, I much prefer It's All Right. Um, it's All Right's in my top 25 Black Sabbath songs right now, so that should basically sum that up. Um, this song I'd say is probably towards the bottom of my list of
Mm,
Black Sabbath songs I ranked. So it's good, but it's like, yeah, it's like, hold on, looking at my list right now, it's at like 59 of 67. So that should tell you right there how I feel.
mm.
What is your top 5 songs?
All right. So my top 5 songs. So at number 5, just barely making it, was Junior's Eyes. Number 4, I believe, again, I don't have my notes, but number 4 was Air Dance. Number
Ugh.
3, Johnny Blade. Number 2, Shockwave. And number 1, the Never Say Die.
Huh, so basically, we have like the same top 5, but like different order.
Yeah,
My number
that's
5
okay.
should be Shockwave. My number 4 should be Junior's Eyes. My number 3 is gonna be Never Say Die. My number 2 is gonna be Air Dance, and my number 1 is gonna be Johnny Blade.
All right.
And I'm gonna say my top 10 songs right now from them is Air Dance, Gypsy, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Johnny Blade, Wheels of Confusion, Under the Sun, uh, Sabra Cadabra, Spiral Architect, Who Are You? And my favorite song by them is still National Acrobat. They still haven't topped that song yet.
Mm.
What do you rate this album though?
All right. Rating the album's definitely very interesting because when I when I the original score, it's not the final score, but the original score, I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Hmm.
However, after giving it another listen this morning, I decided to bump it a little bit higher. I thought it was a bit too harsh. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Again, it's not the worst album I ever heard. It's not horrible by no means. But the thing that really detracts this album for me, and that's why it's, as of now, it's my least favorite Black Sabbath album. I just feel like you can definitely hear that their hearts weren't in it. They were just kind of cruising just to get by. A lot of the songs just didn't really do a whole lot for me. A lot more songs that kind of meandered, didn't really do a whole lot. But again, the songs that I did like were pretty decent. So I don't think it's a like I said, it's not an outright terrible album, but it's definitely, I think, their weakest album so far.
Yeah, I think this could be like I said. I feel like I had a feeling there would be a little divisiveness. I gave this album 9 out of 10.
Mm,
Uh, Very generous score. Uh, even though there are songs I'm not as into, I still think that I feel like the top 5 really pushed it over the edge, especially my top really the top 3 is what made this album 9 out of 10. The other songs are pretty good too in their own way. I will say the last 2 tracks weaken the album because I was
mhm,
originally gonna give it a 9.25 out of 10, but those last 2 songs kind of like actually 9.5 it was gonna be, but then those last 2 songs bumped it down to 9 out of 10. But yeah, it's I still think this is a really underrated album, especially my favorite 2 songs. They're very underrated. I feel like no one talks about those songs at all. Um, what I said this before we started the stream. We're going to be ranking the Sabbath albums with
mhm,
Ozzy Osbourne, the 70s albums, I would say.
mhm.
Uh, we'll wait for him to
Okay.
get back.
Yeah, I'm back here. Don't worry.
It's probably gonna get his
Just wanted to get them real quick.
yes. So since this isn't like a ranking video, I'm just gonna go like he's gonna give his ranking. I'm gonna give my ranking, and that'll be it.
All right, good. Let me just put them in order real quick. Shouldn't take
Okay.
me too long. A couple seconds here.
Gee, I wonder
All
what
right.
number eight's gonna be.
Yeah, I wonder. All right, so going quickly again, at number 8. Number 8, yeah, it's gonna be Never Say Die for all the reasons I said already.
Yeah,
Number
if
number
you don't know, just rewind the video.
Exactly. Just watch this again. Give us another view. So number 7, and this is where this one is actually pretty good. Again, number 7 is gonna be Technical Ecstasy. Again, pretty solid album. Again, you can watch a review on it, see our more in-depth thoughts, but I think it's a very solid album. This one I definitely would say is underrated. Okay, number 6. This might be a controversial placing. We're gonna go with Master of Reality.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying it's always your least favorite of the big six.
Yeah, and again, I have no idea why, because there's a lot of great songs on it, but out of the 6, this is one I played least for some reason. But we'll see if that changes later on. Okay, number 5, I got the debut. Again, really strong debut. A lot of great stuff on that one. I mean, really, my 5 and 4 could always flip flop. Some days I like this one better. Some days I like the other one better. So for right now, number 4 is going to be Paranoid. Don't have much to say on it right now. And then my top 3 has always been the top 3. Number 3, I have Sabotage. Just one of the more epics, like the epic songs on that. And then number 2, Volume 4, and then number 1, still Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Yes. There's actually some albums I actually agree on. Number 5 and number 2 and number 1 we actually agree on.
Oh wow, cool.
My number 8 is going to be Paranoid. If you want to hear my full in-depth thoughts on that, watch that video. But just to shorten it up, I much prefer the second half than the first half. That's basically about it on that. My number 7 is going to be Sabotage. It's a good album. I liked it, but I did feel like it was a strong step down after the previous 2 albums. Number 6, I'm going to say Never Say Die. I think it's an extremely underrated album. Again, if you don't know what my thoughts are, rewind the video because right now we're live, so I could see someone just hopping on the video last minute. My number 5 is going to be the debut. Definitely great starts from a great band. Number 4, this could be my biggest hot take. Technical Ecstasy. I think Technical Ecstasy is better than Sabotage and the debut and Paranoid. That's huge hot take. I love this album. It's super underrated. Number 3 is gonna be Master of Reality. I feel like these top 3 albums are like their biggest fan favorites, and for good reasons. I'm guessing maybe the basic one on the top 3 though.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Volume 4. Of course, love Volume 4. It would totally be number 1 if it wasn't for FX. That's like the one big thing of why it's not number 1. And then of course number 1, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Every song on it's really good. No FX on it. Just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes our ranking. You have anything else you want to add or mention?
Well, other than that, even though my review was a bit more negative, I will say the next one is going to be very positive because now Ozzy out of the band, and now Black Sabbath are going to enter a new era once we get to the 80s.
Yes. My thing I'm going to say is stay tuned. We're not going to be doing it next Saturday because I'm going to be going away next Saturday. So we're going to be doing it on the other day Breyer's off, which is Tuesday. So stay in tune. If you're a fan of this series and you like to keep up with it, definitely check it out on Tuesday. I don't know when we're going to be doing that review, but it's going to be sometime Tuesday of next week. And hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. This is a fun series. One of my favorites, definitely my favorite series going through because just discovering someone who loves Black Sabbath as much as I do. Going through these albums is so much fun. Even though I may or may not have a controversial opinion every once in a while, I think the next few albums, I feel like, well, there's a certain album that we both really like that. We're both gonna have hot takes on one video.
Yeah.
It revolves an album cover with a demon baby, so
yeah,
it's an interesting album cover. I have a huge hot take on that video, but we'll wait for that video to come out. Thank you guys again. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you guys have a good one, and See you next time. So long.